I remember standing by that drinks table, holding a glass I hadn't touched, watching the man I was supposed to marry laugh loudly across the garden like I didn't exist. And I kept thinking, is this really happening? Let me take you back to the beginning. Daniel and I had been together for 2 years. 2 years of what I genuinely believed was love. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who walked into a room and immediately knew how to own it. I admired that about him. I was quieter, more private. I had been raised to be. My family, and I'll get to my family, always taught me that you don't announce yourself. You don't wear your name like a badge. You let people know you through your character, your kindness, your presence. So when Daniel and I started dating, I never made a big deal about who I was or where I came from. He knew I had a formal family. He knew we had certain traditions. He never asked much beyond that, and honestly, I never pushed him to. Looking back, that was my first mistake, because Daniel had constructed a version of me in his head, a version that was convenient, manageable, something he could present or not present as he pleased. And I had let him. The party was at his colleague Marcus's house. Big garden, string lights, the kind of event where everyone is trying slightly too hard to seem relaxed. Daniel had been talking about it for weeks. His old university friends were going to be there, people he hadn't seen in years. He was excited, nervous. In the 3 days before the party, he said things to me that I filed away without fully processing at the time. Just keep things low-key tonight, yeah? My friends are a bit, particular. Don't go overboard. Can you just be normal? Like, just be normal. I remember laughing the last one off. Just be normal. I asked him what that meant, and he shrugged and said, "You know what I mean?" I did not know what he meant. Or maybe I did, and I didn't want to. We arrived together. The moment Daniel saw his friends near the far end of the garden, something shifted in him. Physically, his shoulders changed, his jaw set. It was like watching someone put on a costume. He grabbed my hand briefly, and walked toward them. "Lads! Finally!" He was loud, bright, magnetic. They embraced him, slapped his back, fell into the easy rhythm of old friendship. And then one of them looked at me. "Who's this?" Daniel barely glanced in my direction. "Oh, this is Sarah. We hang out." "We hang out." I smiled. I kept my face completely still, and I smiled because I had been trained since childhood to never let a room see your reaction before you've decided what your reaction should be. But inside, something cold moved through me. "We hang out." Not, "This is my fiancé." Not, "This is the woman I am going to marry." Not even, "This is my girlfriend." "We hang out." He didn't look at me when he said it. He had already turned back to his friends. For the next 40 minutes, I existed at that party the way a piece of furniture exists, present, unacknowledged. Daniel would occasionally appear at my side, refill my drink, say something vague, and then drift back toward his group. Every time I tried to move toward him and his friends naturally, there was suddenly somewhere else he needed to be. Someone else he needed to speak to. A reason, always a reason, to redirect me away. I am not a paranoid person. I don't manufacture problems. But there is a particular cruelty in being made invisible by someone who is supposed to see you better than anyone else. It is quiet, it is deniable, and it is suffocating. A woman named Claire, warm-faced and clearly a few glasses of wine in, came and stood next to me near the garden border. "How do you know Daniel?" she asked. "I'm his fiancé," I said. The silence that followed was only about 2 seconds long, but it was the loudest 2 seconds of the entire evening. Claire blinked. Her expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and then, unmistakably, something like pity. "Oh," she said carefully. He never mentioned." I looked across the garden. Daniel was looking directly at me. He had seen the exchange, and the expression on his face wasn't guilt. It was panic. He came over fast, laughing in that performative way people laugh when they're actually terrified. "Claire, you met Sarah. Brilliant." He put his arm around me like we were fine, like everything was fine, like he hadn't just spent 40 minutes pretending I was nobody. Claire smiled tightly and excused herself. I looked up at him. "Walk with me." We moved to a quieter corner near the side of the house, and I asked him, very calmly, very quietly, "Why have you not told a single person here that we are engaged?" "Babe, come on! Don't answer the question!" He exhaled, ran a hand through his hair, and then he said it. The thing I hadn't fully let myself expect. "My friends are a certain type. They'd ask questions about your family, about your background, about, you know. I just didn't want to deal with the whole thing tonight. I wanted one normal night." I stared at him. "One normal night. You know what I mean. Say it clearly, Daniel. I want to hear you say it clearly." He looked away. "You're different from them. That's all." I didn't want the night to become about that. Different. He was ashamed of me. Not because of anything I had done. Not because I had embarrassed him or behaved poorly, but because of something he had decided about me. Something he had constructed entirely in his own head. And rather than confront it, rather than simply love me out loud, he had chosen to erase me. I walked back into the party without saying another word. About 20 minutes later, I heard it before I saw it. A ripple. The particular kind of quiet that moves through a crowd when something unexpected has entered the space. Conversations trailing off, heads turning. Someone near the gate actually took a step back. My cousin Layla walked in first, then my aunts, then my mother, in that unhurried way she has always moved through the world, like time adjusts itself for her rather than the other way around. My father beside her, and behind them, because it was a public setting and because my family has protocols for public settings, 2 of our formal household attendants in full ceremonial dress. I had genuinely forgotten about the attendants. I had called my cousin earlier from the bathroom, a brief, distracted call, and she had mentioned they might stop by. I had assumed it would be quiet, casual, a few minutes. I had not accounted for what my family looks like when they arrive somewhere. They look like an arrival. The garden went nearly silent. Someone said our family name. I heard it clearly. So did several other people. And then I watched Daniel's face. He was standing about 15 feet away with his friends, and I had a direct line of sight, and I want to be precise about what I saw. First confusion, then the slow, dawning recognition, the moment the name landed and connected, then something that looked almost like vertigo, like the ground had shifted slightly under him. His friend leaned close and said something in his ear. Daniel nodded, very slowly, like a man receiving information he could not immediately process. My mother walked directly to me, kissed my cheeks, held my face in her hands for a moment. "Darling, you look pale. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mum." She looked at me the way mothers look at their children when they know perfectly well that fine means nothing of the sort. But she released me and turned to the garden with that warm, practiced grace that I have watched my entire life, the ability to make any room feel like she has always belonged in it. The host, Marcus, appeared at her elbow almost immediately, tripping over his own welcome. My father, meanwhile, had located Daniel. I watched him walk over. I watched Daniel straighten instinctively. That involuntary squaring of the shoulders that men do when they feel assessed. My father extended his hand. You must be the young man. We've heard a great deal about you. Daniel shook it. Yes, sir, yes, nice to meet you. My father held the handshake a beat longer than necessary. He has always had a talent for that. Then he smiled, released his hand, and turned to speak to someone else. Daniel stood very still for a moment. Then he looked at me from across the garden. I did not look away. I did not smile. I just looked back. Claire, the woman from earlier, found her way to me again. I had absolutely no idea, she said, low and earnest. I feel terrible. He never, not once. Why didn't you say anything? I picked up a fresh drink from the passing tray. He asked me to keep things simple tonight. I said it quietly, pleasantly, with a perfect smile, and Daniel, who was standing close enough to hear, went completely still. My family stayed for about 40 minutes. In that 40 minutes, every single person Daniel had spent the evening trying to impress found a reason to orbit our family. His friends, the particular ones, the ones he'd been so anxious about, the ones for whom I was too different and too much, were suddenly very interested in speaking to me, in laughing at my jokes, in asking where I'd studied, where I'd traveled. Daniel stood on the edges of it. He didn't try to insert himself. He didn't try to perform. The armor was simply gone. Before they left, my father found Daniel one more time. He shook his hand again, and he said, looking him directly in the eye, "Take care of her." 3 words, that was all. Daniel said, "I will, sir." My father nodded once and walked away. I don't think either of us fully believed Daniel's answer. The car ride home was 15 minutes of silence. Then Daniel said, "I didn't know. You never told me." I turned and looked at him. "You never asked." Another silence. "Sarah." "You introduced me as someone you hang out with, Daniel, in front of people whose opinion you care about. You spent the entire evening making sure I stayed invisible. That is what happened tonight. That is what I need you to sit with." He didn't respond, and honestly, that was its own kind of answer. Here is what I want you to understand, because this is the part that actually matters. It was never about the attendance. It was never about my family's name or the way people's faces changed when they heard it. None of that was the point. The point was that the man I was going to marry looked at me, fully knowing who I was as a person, having spent 2 years with me, and decided I was something to manage, something to keep in a separate compartment away from the parts of his life that he actually cared about. He wasn't hiding my background. He was hiding me. And the cruelest part is that he thought he was being subtle. He thought I wouldn't feel every single minute of it. He thought the smile I kept on my face meant everything was fine. I had been taught to keep my face still. That doesn't mean I wasn't feeling it. Someone who is genuinely proud to be with you doesn't need a special occasion to say so. They don't need a reason. They don't need to calculate who is in the room before they reach for your hand. You should never have to wait for your family to arrive for the person you love to acknowledge you exist. And if you ever find yourself standing alone at a party, holding an untouched drink, watching the man who asked you to marry him laugh like you are not there, listen to what that silence is telling you.